Hello and welcome back to another guide for Europa Universalis, MEIOU and Taxes. This time we are also again looking into the economy, more on the trade focus, and I picked a campaign I have played over, well, Christmas and New Year's Eve. Basically, what I want to show you is an advanced campaign when you are playing trade focus. So I started as Yemen and later on went into Arabia. It's now 1650. So almost 300 years I played so far, and I built a massive colonial empire and a trade empire basically, which is generating mostly trade. And I just want to show you like how you could get to this point, or what kind of things you need to keep in mind to get into the situation I am currently. So basically, most importantly, you want to concentrate as much wealth as you can into the hand of the burghers to make them extremely rich. So for example, these burghers in my country make 15k per year. I think it's per year. And in comparison to for example, to me, my state income, it's 300 per month. So it's far less than what the burghers are making. So they are super rich, and they are mostly building up everything in my country. As you can see here, basically have everywhere there are constructions ongoing, which are always or mostly always funded by the burghers. For example, if we take our colonies here, one of the islands which we colonized a while ago, like 200 years ago or something like that, and you can see that they are pretty far built up, and that's not funded by me. Instead, it's the burghers who are doing all the investment, because they have, for example, in this island they have 100% power. So I encouraged them a lot, and I gave them the reforms they want to be relatively independent. So for example, I went to free commerce, so level 9. I could go up to level 10 in fact, so because we already are in global trade and stuff like that. And I went to urban governance level 5, extensive charters. I don't want to go higher here, because then you have really massive gravity and autonomy from the burghers. This one is like, it's real hefty already, but the most important part is that they are getting a tax from the residents, therefore making them richer. And while I reformed, of course, the aristocracy away from getting all the income, so I'm at gentry level, which massively reduces the cash they get from peasantry, residents and burghers. So most of the wealth, let's check the nobles, they are still making 5k, because they still own a lot of stuff, plus just resources, which are, of course, are profitable. But most of the stuff is now going into the burghers' hand, which then is generating trade volume and generating cash. And now if we look into detail here, this icon here is the most important one. It's a trade overview, and as you can see here, we are generating almost 62k in value, which is getting traded. If you play, for example, Portugal as an alternative to, you can basically do the same I did as Yemen. As Portugal, for example, you could create a massive empire. So my provinces currently are stretching from Indonesia to Arabia, into Egypt, into South Africa, and then into South America. And I got, I think, 1 or 2 provinces up here. So there's also some colonial nations here. Of course, that's why I'm unlocking a lot of trade value. You could do the same as Portugal. It's probably even simpler. Yemen has a lot of problems with the Mamluks, so at some point I had to break them. After like 200 or 250 years of being afraid, I was finally able to break them apart. And Timurids, in fact, was one of my best buddies here. And I took Ceylon here at some point, and I took, very early, I went into Sindh here to unlock the Indian trade, because you can basically conquer yourself from here to the east of the Arabian Peninsula, and then you can try to jump up here and try to get into India, which is most important, because then you have a good connection into the trade of India before you even have exploration or stuff like that. That's something I really would recommend to do. Now, back to the trade. As you saw, it's like 62k trade volume, and if you look into the details here, what we can see, most of the stuff that is traded is, for example, food, exotics, urban production. I even have a lot of waste production by by now, and of course a lot of exotics and delicacies. I'm basically channeling all the delicacies from the world through Yemen here, selling it to Europe, selling it to China, wherever I can get my hands on delicacies basically. Also quite interesting is the development of the prices. Everything is literally dropping for centuries now because I connected the whole world economy, therefore making a lot of cash and producing interesting situations. Let me set up a map mode to show you something. Now what I set up is the food price map mode here, which is showing the price development on the world. As said, I connected basically most of the economy. As you can see here, the colors are relatively similar. So basically in Europe you have the prices around 2. Arabia is also around 2. And interesting it is in China. So China also went up to almost 1.5 to 2. And it has still one region which has extremely low price, which is this trade node here, which still has a price of 0.5 for food, which is something the Chinese market can develop to. And I'm not connected to this one, so because I don't have any province which is close enough to this trade node to get access to this trade. So as soon as I would unlock this trade node, all the food which is super cheap here would also get gobbled up by my economy basically. So the easiest way would be to go north of Japan into some of the province here, but I can't reach it because Spain was faster. So I would need to do a war against them to get access to it, but I'm too lazy to do it. And it's also, they have heavy ships and I don't have them, so they would sink almost all my navy instantly. So be careful if you go against heavy ships and you don't have your own ones. So basically we are pulling all the food and stuff from India, raw materials, industrial products, which we also produce by now far cheaper than the Chinese or the Indians were able at start, and basically distributing that in the world economy. Some things to note, what you need to do is you have to get control of South Africa here. I am basically the only one, if we look into the node, who has a province here. Oh, Spain got one. Ah, they got St. Helena by now. Okay. Yeah, Spain got one province, so they were able to go around me by now. But if you can, try to get everything to the South African node here, just to shut it down so that the Europeans cannot go through it. Especially also if you play Portugal, it's quite nice to grab it here, because the land is quite nice. You can do quite a lot of industrial here, produce a lot of value, and your cities can produce a lot of stuff. After a while, of course, it takes time to build up. But you can make some profit here, and it's a power base for your burghers, which of course can then make even more cash and invest it in your worldwide economy basically. And other things is, for example, you want to grab the islands. These two, for example, are really nice, and you want of course to go into Indonesia here. For example, grab Singapore. I only got this island up here at some point, which is now one of the dominant trade nodes here. It doesn't matter, you can develop everything into a dominant trade node as long as you are in there and you have access to all the markets. For example, I lost a lot of stuff to Spain here because I was quite late to colonization, so they were able to jump there. But it doesn't matter too much. They of course also make a lot of money from trade, but I'm still pretty dominant. Another node you want to connect to is, for example, if you play Portugal or Yemen or any other colonizer like Spain, you want to get into the Congo here because that's the easiest way to get exotics very cheaply. And for example, here the prices for exotics are 5, extremely cheap, and the delicacy prices are pretty high. For example, if you from Portugal can trade into Congo, you can sell delicacies here and buy cheap exotics. Therefore boost your early trade quite quickly before you can get into Indonesia and therefore get the big quantities of exotics basically. That's something I always do. I rush it, basically get into Congo here, get into West Africa, get into East Africa to get all the very cheap products. But the Congo is special because the trade node is somewhat separate at game start and is only getting unlocked by colonization and exploration. Now that's basically how you want to continue here, or like how to get here. And if we look at our, for example, do a census here, our industry is by now massive. We have an extreme deficit of food. We have produce a lot of salt because we have a lot of coastal provinces. We have a massive deficit of fiber, for example, for all the urban production, raw materials too. And we are producing a lot of urban materials because we have a lot of cities, we have a lot of stuff. And in fact, we are overproducing, for example, consumer goods by a lot. However, we are not producing enough. So if we do another census on our population, you would see that, let's say, take wealth here, that, for example, the happiness of our residents are relatively low. They have enough life comfort to grow relatively quickly. And the burgers are a lot poorer than you would think about it. Like, the life fulfillment isn't that high for a burger, and the comfort and luxury is extremely low. It's because there is not enough product in the economy anymore. So they are making, the average income is like the general income. On top is all the trade income which is coming in. So they are making a lot of money and they can't invest it except into infrastructure because there's not enough stuff in the world economy anymore. I'm gobbling up basically everything into what I'm doing. And therefore my provinces here, I have, how can you check it? No, let's use a ledger here. So if we look at the states, our Yemen and Tiyama, which is the next one with Zana in here, and all the provinces here, they have like 366 development. Everything is getting pooled in here. I have massive cities here. Everything is like urban infrastructure 4 or 5 getting built up even further. I'm super rich here and basically pulling everything there. Now, if you want to get to this point, focus on commerce early on, get your reforms ready, and start into exploration and unlock the trade nodes. Therefore, you want to be first, you want to get rich, so that the second one which comes in, like Spain or someone else, already has to deal with the higher prices that you caused. Say, for example, we caused the Chinese food price to rise by almost 1, which is a massive amount. Therefore, nobody else can trade efficiently anymore food from China to, for example, Arabia or the steppes here. Steppes not, but like Persia or stuff like that. And that's what you really want to focus on. And you don't really need to care about taxation, for example, that much. I didn't do any taxation reforms because that's not my main income here. Of course, I did a lot of noble reforms. I revoked basically all privileges. I had to fight off the tribes, which you don't have to do as Portugal. And therefore, all I'm doing was focusing on trade and get them as strong as possible, and therefore get quite rich from trade income. I have 77 merchants. It's basically every trade node I can access is traded with me, but not all trade nodes are actively trading with me because you need to have a province nearby. For example, I cannot trade into Zalesi here or Western Siberia because I don't have provinces near enough, or like the Scandinavia here. Therefore, the food prices here are also quite different to the world economy, which is basically dominated by me here. Yeah, also, one of your, how do you make money from trade except for unlocking all the nodes? You want to focus, as said, on exotic, on delicacies. But you also want to check out the urban production. For example, luxuries or industrial goods can have quite big price variations. Knowledge is also in the mid game quite high in different regions. Therefore, always check it out to find your best markets. And with that, I'm basically leaving this campaign, or I maybe want to play some years and continue my build up, but I have basically achieved everything you can do in trade. I can just continue building up and basically be the first to unlock industrialization or something like that. It's basically in my hands now. I think I'm also like, yeah, I'm #1 great power by now, even though Ming still has more development because they of course have like 10 times or more my population, but I'm just extremely rich in comparison. Yeah, so if you want to get anything close to this, I would recommend play Portugal. You can do it as Tunis too, play Yemen or Oman. Oman is a very hard choice though. You could also do it as, for example, Kilvar, or how it's called here, Zanzibar. You could do it here. You could also play one of the Indian countries here to go into exploration if you really want to. But I definitely recommend, if you are not that familiar with the proper trade campaign, always pick Portugal first, or Yemen if you want to have a little bit more action, like conquering into Ethiopia or fighting off with the Mamluks. It's more focused on surviving than Portugal is. Portugal is just waiting, basically. So a lot of option what you can do, and Portugal is probably best suited, and second probably Yemen, which is closer to China. So have fun. I always recommend do a trade campaign because you learn a lot about finding out markets, building up cities, and opening up economies, and breaking into monopoles of countries, basically Chinese food economy or the exotic economies of Africa. See you next time.